Hello, today is April 14, 2022. My name is Alberto Garcia. I am interviewing Derwin Salinas for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas Rio Grande, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas, Austin. Please know, Mr. Salinas, that this interview will be placed at the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voices Oral History Center at the University of Texas, Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there's something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archives will archive your interview along with any other photographs and documentation you're willing to share. UTRGB University Library will retain copyright and non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to the special collections and archives at UTRGB. Because we're not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your consenting to make sure we agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Question number 1. Do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your material at the UTRGV University Library?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right title and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it might be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom meeting interview
Yes,
with
I agree.
Voices of Oral History Center at the University of Texas, Austin for inclusions of the Voices of the Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
As you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use this information from the pre-interview form to help research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voices server at the University of Texas, Austin. The Voices sends it UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives. We will have stripped out any contact information for yourself, family members, so that will not be part of the public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask your consent to what I just described. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in a public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes, I agree.
On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voices receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interviewing subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or email with journalists?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collection and Archives. I look forward to what you say in the interview. Questions I will now ask. So Derwin, thank you for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are valuable to us at the UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and to our partners at the Voices of Israel Center at the University of Texas, Austin. Because you're our main financial provider and your family and experience, because you're our main financial because you're a main financial provider for your family and have experienced the hardships of this pandemic. I know that you have many meaningful stories and experiences to share on how COVID-19 has impacted these roles you carry out in your life. So before we walk about COVID-19 stories, can you please share with us a bit about yourself? Who are you and who do you wish to be known? Who is Derwin Salinas?
Well, I mean, there's just a person who has been just striving to go up in life. Uh, I started off uh, not really thinking much about what I was gonna do, and so I always got stuck with thinking what I'm gonna get into when I grow up. And as I've been growing up, been getting more into um, learning about business and trying to learn as much as I can in every side of the business industry. That way, in the future, I open my own business. Um, my family just includes me and my wife, and I work at Credito Real, which is a finance company, give out loans. Uh, it's pretty much me. And just motivational. I like talking to people, like helping people as much as I can, whatever I can do. Yep.
Yes, I can agree on most of what you said. I know you and I know you are always achieving for something more. Uh, okay, so do you have any first memories of the COVID and university? First memories of COVID and understanding of virus. This do you have any memories like at this time of when the pandemic barely started?
Like hearing about it, or
Yeah, let me rephrase it. So can you share some memorable stories about how you first heard about COVID-19 being like on TV, social media, radio?
yeah. Well, I started hearing about it when they brought out the crazy story about eating the bats in China, and I really thought it was a joke till cases started popping up closer and closer to the United States, and then they started, increasing around where I'm at, and then soon, I mean, almost everybody I knew either had someone who that they knew got it, or they got it.
You mentioned the bats. That will be considered a rumor. Did you actually believe that one, or maybe the
Um,
rumors that you heard?
I mean, if it was the first time I heard them saying that they had done, I don't know if it was something that they do often in China, but I mean, I guess I don't know if it was necessarily that, but I guess it does pertain to it. I mean, you're not supposed to be eating live bats or dead bats.
I understand. Uh, you said like people were people you knew actually were getting the virus or they knew somebody that was getting it. At what point did you realize this pandemic was a serious life alerting event? Or the,
Once our government started telling us that we had to stay in home, really, because if they say it, I mean, really, that's high as I think you can get a warning.
and do you think it's that serious or how do you perceive it at that point?
At that point, I didn't think it was too serious. I just thought it was something like the flu that everybody got until I started hearing about just people passing away. And some people, certain people, I guess, would pass away either just like in a week. Other people would, last months in ventilators. And then some people just got it and it just went away. So
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty bad later on.
yeah, I kind of remember those times. I wanted to ask you, do you remember what was What was it like for you during the stay-at-home orders in 2020? Do you have any stories that you can tell us from that?
Well, I mean, I really got used to staying at home after they told us that I wouldn't go out much before, but after it was kind of like really, really like whatever we really needed at the house, then we would go ahead and go out to get it. Obviously, wearing masks, wearing gloves at the stores at first, and try and go out as minimal times as possible during the month.
Okay. Um, Over the last couple of years, meaning by the start of this pandemic on 2020, uh, what what news media or social media or what sources did you rely to get informed about this virus, or which ones do you prefer?
Well, I really didn't see any particular news outlet. If I would go into Facebook, I mean, any news outlet that would be posting something on it, I would just read on it, and they were basically all saying the same thing.
So mainly probably only social media for you.
Yeah, social media was probably the main thing.
Uh, and this is just a following question. Can you share with me what you understand about the COVID-19 as infectious disease, and how do you feel it impacted society? Likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about COVID with and wish you could know more about?
Well, I just know that COVID is a type of this just like kind of disease that I mean it affects temporarily, but it goes mainly for the lungs into I mean it kind of affects the lungs. I really don't know a lot about it, but I just know that most people who got infected with it and would go into those stages to where they would get very sick would most often be because of their lungs not working, and that was due to the COVID. Um, but I don't know it like extensive detail into it.
Mm. Do you have any more information that you wish uh, you had knowledge of that you didn't have back then?
Well, I mean, particularly just that because I didn't know what it was at all. I just thought it was like a flu, so I just wanted to know how to how it would be contract got onto someone if you could just get it by just touching someone or being close around someone. And then that's when I started learning also later on that we had to be 6 feet apart for the same reason we couldn't contact each other because it's very, very contagious. So uh, yeah.
And now that you mentioned that it was contagious, did your family members take it as seriously as you did? How seriously or lightly did they take this whole pandemic? Was
Well,
it-
my family being mostly Latino, um, Mexican, um, they they're just the type of people not to really like care about it until obviously someone or something got it and someone close to them or someone that they knew got it and started passing away because it's like I they see the news a lot
Mhm.
and they started taking it pretty serious after seeing that it got to the valley. um we stopped having parties like we would before get-togethers. Everybody would kind of just stay at their house for the whole 2021 year.
Yeah. Yeah, so they basically, yeah, I mean, once they saw the gravity of the situation, I mean, most of them got a hang of it. I understand because my family was the same. Um, I'm gonna follow up with the vaccination stories and questions. First of all, did you get the vaccine already, and have you gotten any following up booster shots that they're giving?
I got the first two vaccines, Moderna for both of them. I haven't gotten the booster shot just because one of the nurses there told me that we can wait 6 months before we get the booster shot. So I'm right about that time. So I'm getting the booster shot as soon as that
Okay.
time comes around.
Oh, okay. And what was it like? Because I mean, there was this whole controversy about anti-vaccinations, and what was it like for you? Was it easy or difficult to schedule time to get vaccinated, or was it simple enough to do it in and out?
Well, really, I started to get vaccinated. I didn't really look into the controversy because I thought, if it happens, it happens. But I know that a lot of people did get very sick from it. Um, Particularly to me, I didn't get anything from it, just a sore arm for a couple days, a very sore arm for the first time after. But there was nothing that kind of told me, you know what, like don't get it because it might kill you or something like that. That kind of changed my mind on it, my perspective.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, probably on your situation, because the vaccines just got really popular, or we got a bigger ability for them recently. But can you share like a memory from the place that you were vaccinated at? Was this at a local pharmacy, or do you actually have to go to a clinic?
No, it was actually a local pharmacy. It was a CVS actually. Um, yeah, it was a really fast process. Not a lot of people there when I went actually. Um, until later on is really when I started seeing a lot of people go in when I went in for my second shot.
Okay. Yes. So I'm gonna go ahead and follow up with personal questions, as we previously discussed on our pre-interview. Uh, you shared with me that you live alone with your wife. Uh, do you still have your parents and siblings that live here in Edinburgh? You, you mentioned that one of your family members, specifically your dad, actually traveled out of the city to work during this pandemic. How have these conditions during COVID-19 impacted your family life in terms of the way you interact and visit with each other?
Well, with each other, it really hasn't gotten in the way because we live so close. It's not even far away. So just towards the beginning, I guess it was a little bit more hard to go to the family when you didn't know exactly what the disease was until later on when we started getting our first shot and our second shot, where we kind of put that aside because we knew that we should be safe if we all were vaccinated in our family.
Mhm. Uh, so basically, before that, you didn't have any contact with them. But after the shot, were there any changes on like celebrations, holidays, or birthday gatherings?
Yeah, our family started having more gatherings after. They weren't even big gatherings just because of the same thing. We didn't know if family members that are outside of, our main circle, what I would call just the main people that we were always with, if they had anything that could, that they contract to us, like the COVID, obviously. But we did start having get-togethers again, but just between the smaller family instead of inviting people from the outside, or family from the outside other parts.
Yeah, basically your nuclear family. Um, as you mentioned during our pre-interview, uh, this is going more into your labor field. Uh, you had to leave your position as a senior sales associate at Barry Financial because of a condition that affected your wife specifically. You shared uh, how your family actually supported you on your decision of switching careers from being an essential worker working in a public space to a remote form of employment. Can you talk about how you came into that decision, like your switch of employment?
Yeah, so I switched employments more on the reason that I had to be there for my wife and be at a closer space to help her, if anything. My wife had sadly contracted cancer at that time, and I was just taking care of her at home here, being here. I mean, my family did help me out a lot, being in and out whenever, whatever we needed. I really never left the house during that period because I didn't want to get anything or that can make her condition worse. So I was just working from home from there. My family, they always supported me, even if it was the career change. I mean, honestly, it did get my wage up, and I was getting a bit more money. Um, from my mental side, it was just not the type of job for me.
Okay, I understand. So you said that they did support you a lot, and you didn't leave the house because of this unfortunate disease, right? Uh, can you give me like examples of how they were supporting you or helping you out? Did they do groceries for you or any other special services that you needed?
Yeah, my mom and my mother-in-law both would go shopping for groceries and would bring us 2, 3 meals a day for the 3 month period that I was working at home.
Okay. So yeah, well, they basically work together. Besides not leaving the house, did you take any extra precautions during this period? Like were you wearing a mask at your home or?
Wearing a mask at home, I wasn't unless my mother or my mother-in-law were coming in just to be safe on my part or on our part. So when they would come in, then yes, we would always be wearing a mask to get that extra protection. But if nobody was here, we'd just be here walking freely.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing about this. Next, we're gonna go ahead and discuss on questions on your remote work experiences and how was it to you how you were able to adapt to this new form of employment because like you mentioned you were used to working face to face in that other financial institution and doing this drastic jump. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it was something difficult to do as well. Uh, you mentioned that you were working remotely for a financial service uh, collection company, I believe,
Yes.
or they're called Credit Acceptance, uh, where you had some better benefits than your previous employment.
Yeah.
Uh, can you tell me when you started this job and a bit around when did you start this job and what was your typical daily routine working from home?
Yeah, so I started it in March 2021, and it was something that I was looking to apply to just because of the benefits and the pay. Mostly because it was from home and I needed to be home. So um, I'm glad that they gave me that opportunity. It was hard to adapt. I was at home a lot already, but working 8 hours a day in the same room and not having, no coworkers or anyone to talk to kind of did take me out of the normal situations that I was always in, where obviously it's contacted with my coworkers, Um, so it was hard. Um, it wasn't a hard job. I mean, maybe it was a little bit on the emotional side because of what I had to do in that job, but it was a it was more mental for me. because I would have gone through with the job, but it was in more of a mental thing for me where I felt kind of depressed being at uh, at work from 8 in the morning to 7 at night, um, alone.
Yes, yes, I'm here. Sorry.
No, no, I said that I was alone.
Oh,
From 8 in the morning to 7. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It was just bad. I've been working for maybe a total of, I would say, like 7 years, and for these 3 months, I felt like it was hell.
Yeah. You mentioned that it was the emotional side that affected you the most, uh, and the type of work that you did on this company was basically collections, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Uh, do you know if the company offer any kind of financial support or any financial programs to customers that were uh, struggling financially at that time?
Yes, they actually were. In certain cities, we couldn't contact to repossess their vehicle only because, according to state laws and to their systems, they would kind of give these people a more uh,
Okay.
expanded period for them to have in order for them to pay their vehicles, because they knew of the situations where COVID was affecting people's jobs. So there were certain places where I would call that I couldn't call to repossess the vehicle, just call to remind them about the payment that they had.
Okay. Do you remember a specific story that you were able to probably like help one of the customers get?
Yeah, there was one where the customer had called me, and she was in the middle of the towing company about to get her vehicle. And so I kind of had to go the extra step, call a manager in to see if we can go ahead and take her payment and right there and then. They did give her an opportunity to give her payment, and whatever she had, or it was just enough to where they dropped the vehicle there and she didn't have to pay for the towing, and they didn't take her vehicle. So it's one of the few.
All right. For this next question, I mean, to my understanding on our pre-interview, uh, back when you were with Battery Financial, you were working face to face. And on this one, like you said, it affected you the most because you were basically on the phone. Uh, but with Battery Financial, I know since we've been co-workers in there. Uh, we work mostly with Hispanic population, right? And on credit acceptance, were you working with the with Hispanic or Latino community since you were a bilingual operator with them?
Yes, they would put me a lot. Well, whenever I was needed, someone called in that was speaking Spanish, because I got into the bilingual role. But one of the things with them is that they would also connect me to, I don't know, I would say like Cuban people with very, very thick accents, and sometimes I wouldn't understand them completely myself, speaking Spanish myself. So
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah, it was a lot of Latino people that I did call, mostly because that was more particular in my role.
Okay. Um, and well, it comes to my understanding that you actually did not stay for more than 3 months with them, and you actually returned to work with the Barry Finance, uh, which is, like I mentioned, a company that focuses on helping the Hispanic population. Uh, did COVID-19 had any influences on your decision? Was this because of your wife getting better, or was this mainly because of your mental health at this point?
Really, it was a combination of all three. my wife was doing a lot better. Then I was really struggling mentally with this job just because, as you said, I was a day-to-day basis where we face to face people, and I really love to communicate with people, but in the physical manner to where I'm there in front of them, I'm helping them there. Um, and financially, I mean, I was so mentally, I guess, um, bothered in that sense that I took a pay cut from 18 or 16.50 an hour to getting paid 11.50 an hour or $11 an hour just because it was such a big toll on my mental health. And I actually do not regret the decision. It was really good.
I'm glad that you're doing better right now. Uh, you left before the pandemic actually was at its highest, if I remember correctly. Uh, do you remember what it was like back then once you returned to work? Uh, did the customers remember you once you came back? Do you have any specific stories of people actually being glad that you came back to the work of office work life?
Yeah, the good thing about being there for so long is you really get to know a lot of people who come in, who start building their credit, or people that you know overall from them cashing checks with you. And some of them I know personally just because I would deal with them on a weekly basis. So it kind of gave me, assurance that I did a good decision when I was, welcomed back by not only my coworkers, but by the customers as well.
Yes, that does seem like. I mean, evaluating your point of view. I mean, it kind of grew more on your mental health than of your pay cut deduction, like which was
Yeah.
better investment in the future, right? Uh, upon your return to the office work life, uh, did the new company implemented any new changes, any new safety measures against the COVID-19? Like, was there any more safety protocols introduced than before they left?
I mean, there wasn't much, but what they did do was put in plastic screens to block us from the customers, directly. That way, in case they ever, talked and maybe sneezed or coughed, that we were just protected a bit more by that plastic, that was in front of us. And we did, we were told to wear masks. That way, we would protect ourselves and protect our customers at that time.
Uh, and can you go ahead and do me a reminder? Did you came back to the office in Edinburgh, which was the busiest one inside of the meat store, or were you relocated to the office outside?
So for that, I was given a decision
Mhm.
to choose between going to that store and going to the other office. I chose the office outside of the meat market because of the schedule that they offered, which is 9 to 6, Monday through Friday, and Saturdays it was on and off. So uh, I preferred that over working maybe Monday through Sunday, like any day out of the week I could have been working. So yeah, was given a choice.
Yeah, I would have taken that too. Uh, what was the difference, or did both offices actually follow the same procedures? Were all of the employees wearing their mask and following like the Edinburgh TD's protocols?
Yeah, both of them were always up to using their masks, just because. I guess all of us in the office had already gone through someone, close getting that COVID. And so a lot of our employees, or a lot of the employees, we're still using masks and we're still protecting themselves as much as possible. My coworker Tanya from the Michoacana, she would use gloves all the time. Another coworker, Isamar, who was there just before I left, she also wore gloves all the time. Same reasons that they wanted to be extra careful with themselves and with the customers.
Yeah, I understand. Since they were working face to face and actually never stopped working, right?
Yeah, that's how it was. And inside the meat market, it was a nonstop from clocking in to clocking out.
All right. After all of these precautions, and you're free to talk about this, or you can skip any of my questions. Uh, on our pre-interview, it came to my understanding that you actually uh, got the virus not too long ago,
Yes.
while you were still with this company, right? What was the company's response? Well, what was your employer's response? Were there any special accommodations or any particular safety measures that they took with you once you actually once you came back positive with the virus?
Yeah. They had precautions to where they told me to go ahead and stay home as long as I was coming out positive. I couldn't return to work. They did the minimal 1 week to for me to go ahead and stay home. And they told me to check on after a week to see if I can come back if the test came back negative. They also had someone that was from human resources who would continuously just check on me to see if I had any symptoms or I was getting worse. She would kind of give me little um, things to do if by any chance I still had a cough or sore throat. She would kind of tell me certain things to do at the house. That way I can relieve myself from that. Um, on the side of them taking care of me financially, they didn't help too much.
Okay.
In the past, we did have a policy to where they would give us a 2 week paid period, regardless if we needed the 2 weeks. Because at that moment, I know that we had to wait a 2 week period before we were sure that the virus was out of our system. But recently, when I had gotten the virus, they used my paid vacation hours that I had accumulated myself over time to pay for whatever I was gone.
Okay. Yes, that's a little bit unfair if we think about it. But like you said, it was almost getting out of the pandemic, or well, like not getting out of it, right? But things were changing.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't during the peak. It was as
Yeah,
after the peak of the pandemic when things were starting to slow down because we had our vaccines. I guess they took off that policy. Um, and I guess they didn't see it as much a necessity after for the employees.
I understand. Uh, so how was your experience returning back to the office? Did you encounter any resentment or discrimination from anyone as far as being afraid of getting contacted?
Just
Contacted,
a
I
lot
mean,
of jokes, a lot of jokes around the office, but nothing that was ever, going against me or discriminating against me having the disease in the past. Um, no, it wasn't really much of that.
okay. Oh, that's something good to hear. What was your experience with the virus? Because if I remember correctly, you got it after you received the second dose, right?
Yes, I actually had just gotten it maybe a couple weeks back before that, and for the first time, we had a get together in our house, first time ever.
Yeah.
And it was just, 4 people that we invited, and that were close family. And my cousin's girlfriend turned out to, come out positive, like a couple days later, 2 days later. And I was feeling a little bit sick, but I was, what, this is just some allergies or something. And my cousin called me to go check it out myself. Next thing you know, I was positive. Then my cousin was positive, and everybody else in the house when we were doing that get together was starting to get positive. So yeah. And the COVID didn't hit me too hard. For me, it was just coughing and the occasional sore throat, but nothing too major, like not smelling anything or not tasting anything.
Okay. And you mentioned, well, some of your family members actually contracted the virus as well.
Yeah.
Was their experience the same as yours, or was there any actual severe symptoms for anyone?
No, luckily none of them had any severe symptoms. Everybody kind of got the same thing to where it was kind of more flu-like, nothing too extensive to where, lungs started to, you know, deteriorate or, their breathing stop working as good as it's supposed to be.
Okay. I mean, it's good to hear that they're actually doing good. Um, I just wanted to follow up with this question. How are you currently doing at your place of employment? You mentioned that you're currently working with Credito Real USA. Uh, uh, and I remember that you told me there were some major changes with the previous employer, Barry. Can you tell me about these changes and what do you see uh, the advantages of those changes were? Or
Well, the changes in Bari um, was more on our loan department, on our loan side of the things there, where they didn't want to do any more loans and they wanted to get out of doing that. So they were actually selling off their loan accounts
okay,
to other companies, and Credito Real bought them off. They were one of the potential buyers, and they bought them. They gave us really good opportunities there, just because we did have other buyers who had already talked to us and kind of told us, what they could offer. Um, they backed off, and luckily, Credito Real came in and gave us a pay raise and gave us, a good a good platform to start rebuilding what Bari was going down at.
okay. I mean, at least uh, we had well, at least like you said, you had the highest bidder got in.
Yeah, we were lucky.
Yeah. Uh, okay, so basically, this company just bought you guys out. Can you share with me like if they're taking any extra precautions or if the safety measures are they still the same as they were with Barry as far as this company in
Yeah,
2022?
they kind of kept everything the same. There wasn't anything extra that they told us to do. They did provide us with some masks, and they also left up the plastic, covers that would help us out from getting in close contact with the person. So they kept it to the same standards that Bobby had, which they were working at the time.
No, it's good to know that they're taking care of of their employees, right? Um, we're almost reaching the final questions about the interview, right? And on this section, I wanted to ask you to share any stories you have about this pandemic and the response by local, state, and national elected officials. You can feel free, like I mentioned, to respond to any of these questions or actually escape them if you decide to. But on the first question, do you feel satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in the Hidalgo County or
Yeah,
Hidalgo
I
County?
think that they did their part, because they did start a couple programs that were helping out people with their utility bills, and they also gave out a what is called the Spark program, which was basically a type of plan to where they helped out local businesses. Um, with giving people, $100, I guess you can say, gift cards that can be used on different types of businesses that were local around Hidalgo County and the valley in general, that would help us all, or help the business owners, keep, their sales up some way, somehow. And also letting the people know that, it's okay to keep on going to these businesses. So they did help out. I think they did, just what they had to do. They didn't do anything too crazy, or they didn't stay silent and not do anything for us.
Are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by our government, Greg Abbott, over these last couple of years?
Well, I have a very different side on that because I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but him being a Republican he was more on the side of thinking that we didn't need masks, that there was supposed to be no mask mandate, and that, he really didn't care, I feel, at all about anybody, because that's just his point of view as a Republican. Um, but I just thought that he didn't do enough, because that's just his point of view in him seeing things.
Uh, this is basically just going up the scale. How do you feel about the national response that President Trump gave back in the year 2020?
Well, that one, I mean, really, that was, I think, the right thing to do. What they did, just stay at home mandate from them too. Because really, we didn't know much at that time, during the 2020, because everything was coming in so fast. So I think it was the correct thing to do. That way, we decreased as much, cases as possible if we had no contact with anybody who had the disease. Um, yeah, I think, for the time, I think it was the best thing that they did was to tell us to stay home.
Okay. And now going to the current President Biden, from his response from 2021 to present, how do you feel he's doing?
Um, well, Biden really goes more just towards telling everybody to get vaccinated. Um, I think just that's kind of the obvious thing to do, get vaccinated at the moment, just because it's already been proved that the vaccination is going to help us, um, even if we do get that virus, control that virus in us. So, um, he didn't do anything extra. I know that, they did bring out those stimulus checks, and it was more during Trump's, term, where they were helping us with those. I know Biden did let out one, but besides that, there really hasn't been much else that he's done besides the child tax credit that was mainly helping out children from the families. But there wasn't anything that was targeted towards adults later on.
Yes, I understand your feelings. So, if you had the power of political office to respond to COVID-19, what would you do? What would you do differently?
Well, I think what they had done was the right thing to do, and probably just the best thing to do. Which, if you didn't know exactly what's going on, either stay home and get vaccinated, um, I think those are the best things to do because you do either or and you'll stay safe. You get vaccinated, don't stay home. I mean, you're still keeping yourself safe. And anybody out there who is out there they should be vaccinated. You should be okay. There should be nobody getting sick from each other. And if you don't want to get that vaccination, you should stay at home as much as possible to protect yourself.
and the others. I agree 100% with you at that point. Um, as far as this year, this is a special year in our national democracy because it's a midterm election voting year. Do you plan to vote? And if so, is the issue of COVID-19 going to factor into your votes?
At this moment in time, I don't think it's gonna be as big as a um threat or as big as a term to talk on, just because it's been getting controlled, higher and higher percentages. So I don't wouldn't really vote based on what their plan is with COVID, because I think that the current plan that's already set, which is, people just get vaccinated, I don't think that's going to be changed by the next person that's going to come into term as a president.
Mhm. Well, and now that you mentioned that, I mean, you said that you classify neither as a Democrat or Republican, not a liberal, right? Something in the middle. Uh, would you consider the national response of these political parties against COVID and your vote for the presidential candidate?
Oh, that's hard to say. Like I said, because Republicans have certain things to what I agree with, and Democrats have certain things to what I agree with as well. I think Democrats would have the better opinions on helping people with the pandemic and helping them, making more mandates on that. Republicans would probably go on the side of just trying to make it as normal as possible already, without trying to get that into topic. But I mean, if it's gonna come down to, both of them saying something like that, I mean, like, honestly, I already know what to vote for. I would have to wait to see, their exact ideas.
Yes, I understand. Uh, so for the next question, is there any sort of help or aid you could have used at the peak of COVID-19 pandemic to make your life more manageable or less stressful? Or is there any assistance that you wish you had at this point in the pandemic?
Well, I think everything that we got was sufficient. I mean, we really didn't get much, but being a worker, I mean, there wasn't much we needed because we kept on working. I know it would be a different situation if I was affected in the way that I couldn't get a job because of COVID and I needed some help from the government to, get me through that time. I know they were helping out people with the unemployment, raises that they were giving. Um, but for me, they did, what they had to do. They gave us those stimulus checks, which helped out a lot. And obviously the vaccinations were free. So that was good.
All right. And what impact or purpose do you hope your story may have on listeners of the Voices of a Pandemic Digital Archives?
I mean, like COVID is real. And I know there's still speculation out there that it's just a made up disease and people don't actually have it. Um, but I've seen too many cases, knowing from co-workers, family members to, friends, family members that, they passed away from it. So sadly, I mean, you have to come to term that this is real and it's true. And that's an idea that everybody has to get, you know.
I am glad that you're mentioning that, and I'm pretty sure that most of this audience will actually agree with it. Um, is there anything else that you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID that I have not asked you about?
Not really. I do have one story of how COVID affected one of my family members just a little bit more than, the rest of us. My aunt, who works as a nurse in Mexico, was working during the pandemic, during its peak. I remember how much, she had to scrub, putting all those extra clothes on, the extra masks, the extra, face shields, working in day out, not being able to obviously control anything on COVID because it was 2020. Um, After being so exhausted, she got to the point where she was passing out, during work. So they they later found out that she had come out positive for COVID. Her situation got to the peak to where her lungs were starting to deteriorate and not work anymore to full capacity. Luckily, they did this surgery on her that helped her start to breathe correctly again, and she did get better after. COVID did leave her, with a lower capacity to her lungs, but yeah, I mean, being a frontline worker, I imagine, is one of the hardest being in the medical field. And I appreciate anybody who does that.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot for sharing that info. I mean, I know it's a little bit different for the safety measures that they take in these two different countries, right? But like you said, I mean, they're family members as well over there in Mexico, and I mean, I'm glad that she actually came out okay. Uh, if there's nothing else, Mr. Salinas, I would like to thank you for sharing your stories with me and the Voices of Pandemic Oral History Project. Uh, and like I said, I'm really grateful that you did take the time to help me out with this interview.
Of course.